Buying a Jaguar F-Type is probably one of the best decisions I've ever made. However, there are a few things that I wish I knew before I bought this car. So if you're in the market yourself and you're looking at buying yourself a Jaguar F-Type, or if you're just curious to know what it's like to own, in this video I'm going to be going over things like unexpected running costs, costs £3,000, and the type of attention that this car gets.
Sound of them.
Wow. It's good, isn't it? So let's get into it. So number one, the thing that people are probably going to think about first when they're thinking about buying one of these cars, the running costs. Now, for me, before I was coming from a BMW 430D, so I was relatively used to having some kind of expensive running costs. In that car, I was doing around 6,000 miles a year. So if you look at a month, it's around 500 miles, and I was probably spending around 150, 160 quid a month on fuel. Now, I'm doing pretty much the same mileage in this, and I'm tending to find that I'm spending around £200 a month in fuel. So there is a little bit of a jump up in fuel costs. I don't know what the miles per gallon is, but I don't really care. The thing is, with this car, the way that it sounds, it just makes you want to put your foot down and hear what the car sounds like. So you've definitely got a heavier foot. Other running costs, insurance. I don't think these are actually that bad to insure. I do everything I can to get my insurance as cheap as possible. So for me, I think this car costs around £70 a month, or I think it's like 800 quid a year. And you know, for a 375 brake horsepower, 3-litre supercharged V6 at the age of 27, I don't think is that bad. There are a few tricks that I use to get the cheapest insurance possible. So if you want to hear a video on how to get the cheapest insurance possible, just comment below and I'll be sure to do one of them in the future. 800 quid a year on insurance, I don't think is actually that bad. Other running costs, service and maintenance. It has been a tiny bit more expensive. Fortunately, with this car, I've had absolutely no problems mechanically. I've had absolutely no problems at all, really. This car has a really good service history, so all of the service history prior to me buying it was all Jaguar. Now, the only thing with doing servicing and maintenance at Jaguar is really, really expensive. I did want to keep this full service history at the manufacturer. However, when I looked at how much it cost to service this car, it was, I believe, £600. Now that's just for an oil change and pollen filter replacement. I don't really think that's justified. I really do think Jaguar Land Rover just kind of take the piss a little bit with their prices. So I decided to go for a Jaguar Specialist Independent Service and Maintenance Centre in Durham. I think they charged me around £350, £360, which I thought was reasonable. Obviously, it's more than a normal service that you'll get for a kind of more standard car, but I would definitely recommend, if you're going to buy one of these cars, make sure that you're either keeping it main dealer if you can afford it, or make sure you're going to a Jaguar Specialist, because when you're looking at potentially selling the car on and someone's looking at the maintenance work that's been done to the car, for me personally, I want to see that the service history is all either Jaguar main dealer or Jaguar Specialist, because I don't want this car going to people who don't really know what they're doing with the car. And you'll probably see that with a car that has not so good service history, they'll not be as attractive to buyers, and you could potentially have to sell the car for less as well. Now I just want to take a quick second to thank the guys at Steel Shape for sending me this. Now this isn't something that I'd actually seen before until Steel Shape reached out to me, but as you can see, it's a laser cut steel frame of a Jaguar F-Type, and it's not only Jaguar F-Types that they do, but they do all kinds of cars, as you can see on the website steelshape.co. So easy to install. All you have to do is install a little hook like that, and then you can place it on just like that. The great thing is they've got a massive variety of cars. You can get anything from Jaguars, Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Porsche, but on top of that, if they don't have the car that you have, they'll even custom make a car and send it out to you. They come in all different shapes and sizes. Now this is the biggest one. I think it's like 140 centimeters or something, but they come as small as like this. But I think it's a fantastic piece of wall art, something that I'm probably going to keep forever as a memento for the Jaguar F-Type. And I think this is a fantastic present for either yourself or any other car enthusiast that you know. You can find their car or you can have their car made. You can find these at steelshape.co, and you can use code BEN15 for 15% off any order, and they can deliver to anywhere in Europe. Back to the video. Then finally, in terms of running costs, we have parts and repairs. I have heard that replacements for certain parts can get relatively expensive. For example, I've heard the LED lights on this car, just one of those headlights can cost £3,000. The costs can certainly be quite expensive. I haven't heard that many stories of parts having to be replaced. If you are going to buy one of these cars, I would get some kind of warranty, and that will kind of take care of that. Now, the second thing that I wish I knew when I was buying one of these cars, and that is what I consider, or I call, the slippery slope. Now, coming from the BMW and then jumping into this, it has been a little bit of an upgrade. It has been an upgrade. If you look at all of the other YouTube reviews of this car, you'll see that pretty much all of them say that they're an absolutely fantastic car to drive. I absolutely love getting in this car to drive every single time, whether I'm just driving home from work or I'm going for a little bit of a hoon on the weekend or just going to see some mates. It is fantastic to drive. Now, every time I get into a different car, like whether it's a rental car, hire car, or another car in the family, everything else is so boring compared to this. And then this poses the issue. Now that I'm in this car, I'm gonna find it hard to downgrade. And downgrading is something that I've considered a lot because, like I've said already, this car can be relatively expensive to run. I have had a lot of thoughts about selling the car after a year, buying something more affordable, but I just think compared to this car, it's gonna be so boring to drive, and I really, really don't want to buy a boring car. So now I feel like I'm stuck forever driving either cars like this or more impressive cars. Just understand that once you drive it, you won't want to downgrade or go back to anything else. But it is an absolutely fantastic car to drive. Hello, mate.
It's my photos. I see you the last time.
Oh, did you see his last time?
Oh,
yeah. I do YouTube, that's why. YouTube video, yeah.
Oh, right,
check us out. Ben Gibson.
Sound of them.
Wow. It's good, isn't it? Make sure you subscribe. See you later, mate. And then we have a question that I'm sure is on everybody's mind: reliability. Now, I've already made a video on my experience with this car's reliability and the real experience that I have when I first bought a Jaguar F-Type. Just a disclaimer, this is not my first Jaguar F-Type. As you'll see in the video that I'll put up here, I bought a car just over a year ago. After a week, it broke down and I had to send the car back to the dealer, gave him the keys, and I said, I can't take the car. Now, in the video that I put up there before, you'll see I go over an issue that these cars have a lot of problems with, and that is the fuel injectors. The fuel injectors, I think, are probably one of the most prominent problems. This engine tends to get a lot of water ingress. The fuel injectors seize up and then the engine starts misfiring. Now, when this does happen, you have to replace the injectors, you have to tear apart the engine, and it can cost quite a lot of money. Now, in terms of build quality, there have been a couple of things which have annoyed me. This would include, number one, the start button, as you can see, has faded. I was looking at replacing this. I think it'll probably cost around 100 quid for the part, and then I'll have to install it myself. There are just a couple of tiny little rattles I have come across. One of them is when I play music relatively loud, which I do on quite a frequent basis, I hear a kind of like buzz rattle coming from here just because of the frequency of the music. When it's here, it's right in my ear when I'm driving, and it's so annoying because I love to listen to loud music. And then one thing you probably want to consider if you're looking to buy in this car is practicality. Now, for me, I'm a 27-year-old. I don't have a family, I don't have kids. I thought this was probably the perfect time for me to buy a car like this because obviously it only has 2 seats. In terms of daily driving, it's actually spot on. It's really comfortable to drive on a daily basis. It's kind of cozy in the cabin. I would say on longer trips, it's not ideal. When I had the car before, it had the cloth or suede seats, and I felt like they had a lot more cushion to them, whereas these leather ones really don't have as much cushion, and I do tend to find that my back hurts a little bit. Then practicality, the thing that you're probably going to associate most, boot space. I think this has a really good amount of boot space. You can probably fit 2 small suitcases in here. If you want to do a weekend away in a car like this with the missus, I think it's spot on. Then we have the way that this car drives. I can't lie, for the money that you can buy these cars now, it's an absolute joke. Jesus. First of all, the way that it sounds, I've already touched on it, but the V6, at the time I couldn't afford the V8, but the V6 sounds absolutely insane. It's got more of that higher pitch sound, so when you knock it down, it goes the higher revs. To me, it sounds like an old kind of like race car, but then you've got the handling. The handling is, it's kind of like it's on rails. It feels to me like it's on rails because of how stiff the suspension is. And then if you want to put it in comfort mode, chill out a little bit, it'll soften up the suspension a tiny bit, but not a huge amount. It can be just a nice, comfortable car when you want it to be. Like, the valves are closed now, I'll put my foot down. Way more quiet. It's great to daily drive. I have it in sports mode all the time because I love to hear that exhaust. I think the rear wheel drive just makes it a little bit more risky and a little bit more fun. Me. And I love that. I love when I see that spoiler go up in the rear mirror. It looks quality. And then the final thing that I wish I knew before I bought this car is the type of perception that people have of you when you drive it. As you'll have seen before when I was recording over there, the postman stopped and commented on the car, say that they sound phenomenal, and I couldn't agree more. Now, I'm fortunate enough to be insured on my dad's car, which you'll see on this channel, which is an Aston Martin DB11. I've mentioned in that car, the first time I ever drove it through Newcastle, it was summer and I had my window down and I was making a kind of like sharp turn slowly, and this guy just walked past the car and called me a knobhead for no reason. I think people think that when you drive such an expensive car, you must be an ignorant bloke who just wants to show off, when I don't really think that's the case when you drive nice cars. You know, people just want to have a nice car and enjoy the drive. But with this car, people do think it looks a lot more expensive than it is. When I drive this car compared to the Aston Martin, it feels like it gets a lot more respect, and it's kind of like a nice little level where it's a nice enough car for people to comment on, but it's not too flashy. Obviously it's still flashy, but people seem to really like and enjoy this car. I get a lot of love when I'm driving this car through Newcastle. I get a lot of guys kind of like giving me nods, telling me that it's a nice car when I have my window down. So yeah, I think generally the perception really good. The only thing that you'll get when you drive this car, you know, if you buy a car like this for £26,000, people think you might be quite a bit richer than you actually are, because I'm not a rich man, but this car I think makes me look more wealthy than I actually am. So then those are all of the things that I wish I knew before buying this car. Do I have any regrets buying this car? Not one. Not one regret. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have one of these cars, let me know your experience with them in the comments below. Please do consider subscribing to the channel because I want to be successful enough to buy that V8, and maybe you guys can help me get there. But I hope you enjoyed the video and I'll see you next time.